Hello and welcome to The Healing Way. My name is Richard Clark, and on this video I'll be talking more about the Higgs field and carrying on where I left off from the last video, trying to get a greater understanding of it all and trying to pass on that understanding. Okay, where was I with the Higgs field? It seemed to me there was a large Higgs field that controls everything, all of reality, all of physical life, physical creation, all comes from that. And it seems that I'm having to give this field more and more, assign it more and more greater abilities. For instance, it not only imparts mass to particles, it also organises that mass and it maintains that mass in a certain way. It's logical really that it would not just impart mass to particles, it would also organise how the whole structure works. And also once it's discharged the mass from itself out into the physical universe, it becomes the creative state, the creative source, which then acquires new things, new shapes, new understandings, new concepts, new content, which can then go into the next cycle. I've said all this on the last video, I'm just bringing myself up to speed really. Right, so there's this overall Higgs field, which I like to think of as the operating system on a computer. If you imagine reality, physical universe is the computer, it needs an operating system. So that would be the operating system. What makes it all work, what keeps it going, the maintenance. Now it seems that individually we have a Higgs field looking after our brains, organising our brains, maintaining our brains, keeping our brains the way they are, not allowing too much deviation in the way the brain over successive generations is created and the way it grows. It oversees the structure of it, maintains that structure. It doesn't allow a lot of deviation, because too much deviation means it falls apart, it stops working. So we can look upon this as the larger Higgs field as the operating system. Then we can look at these local individual Higgs fields. They seem like they're the same thing to me, the same thing working in a local way. And we can look upon these as like programs on the computer. Say for instance an antivirus program that does a certain job. Now what seems to happen is the Higgs field becomes contaminated. The localised Higgs field becomes contaminated. This makes sense because previously I would see a process going on. I would see, say, an infection getting into the bone marrow, which is the heart of the immune system. That's my understanding. So an infection gets into the bone marrow. Then suddenly it would vanish. It would vanish. And then it would reappear somewhere else in the body, causing harm, like the brain. And I was trying to understand how it was in the bone marrow and it faded away, and then it would reappear in a different way in the brain. Where did it go? How did it do this? And I have to resist the temptation to just start, creating. I think Einstein did this one. He created his cosmological constant. He didn't know how to make things work out, so he just added something in, just to fill up the space. And I can't honestly say it's a tremendous temptation, but I think you can do it really without thinking. You fill the space up. There's a gap in the process. So you just create something and fill it in. or at least it would be easy to do that. It's a temptation I avoid, because I would only talk about what I've actually perceived. I perceived it disappearing, I perceived it reappearing. And the two things I've got in mind here, probably three: Parkinson's disease, well, all brain and neurological conditions, that would include dementia, and cancer. I think in some forms of cancer, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because the Higgs field, the local Higgs field, would create growth, would stimulate growth, and some forms of cancer involve growth. Again, this is just my layman's understanding. So the localised Higgs field maintains the brain. Again, it would be easy to say it maintains the body, but I don't see that. I can see it linked to the brain, maintaining the brain. Maybe the maintenance of the brain is enough, and the brain maintains the body. That might be how it works, but again, I haven't seen it, so I cannot say that. Now, the localised Higgs field maintains the brain. And here's where it gets tricky. What I couldn't understand was why the Higgs field didn't filter out contamination. Say an infection gets in the bone marrow, and then from the bone marrow it enters the Higgs field. Because the bone marrow is not just the heart of the immune system, there's also the program that controls the immune systems there. Yeah. And this can be damaged in its own way. But this damaged program then becomes absorbed by the Higgs field, crosses over. I think that's right. And in crossing over, it contaminates the Higgs field. So the Higgs field that's maintained in the brain now does it according to its contamination. And the question immediately I thought was, well, why does it do that? Why doesn't it screen out this contamination? Now, I think the answer to that is simply evolution. There's this problem that if the brain is totally fixed, totally nailed down, never allowed to change physically, where's the evolution? How does it adapt to its environment? How does it change to its environment? If you look at the human race over millions of years, there has been a physical change. Yeah? A physical change in the body and the brain. So there has to be that built in. There has to be the Higgs field absorbing factors from the environment that it can feed back into the brain, or the way it creates the brain or maintains the brain. So while there has to be some latitude, so while it, I think possibly it does screen out the worst of the problems, but some problems that are too close to environmental changes that it would naturally take in from the environment in order to adapt the brain to that environment. Bit of a clumsy way of saying it. But when you get something that's very similar to those environmental factors, it won't screen it out, and it will use that to then change the brain. So this is when I think you get these these neurological conditions, brain problems. I think that is a problem with the Higgs field. The Higgs field has become contaminated. So the next thing is, what can be done? Well, the Higgs field, as I perceive it, is very, very perceivable, which means it is of Earth. My perception generally is, if it's a very, very clear perception, it's very close. It's either Earth or very close to Earth. Probably very close to Earth, because for Earth we use our eyes. For very close to Earth we use perception. And as things become further away from Earth, further away from physical existence, they become more intangible, less perceivable, until they gradually seem to fade away as they get closer to the creative source, which is nothing. The closer it gets to the creative source, the more it becomes nothing. So the Higgs field seems to be very, very close to Earth, which means it should be affected by Earth, which means it should be able to be cleansed by methods. The same sort of methods as what I've developed for cleaning the body. We should be able to clean out the Higgs field. It sounds right. I've never tried to do this. I've only ever seen problems in people. But now I'm starting to think, well, maybe what I've been seeing are problems in the fields, in the Higgs fields, because the Higgs field and the person can't be separated. That starts to make more sense. These aren't really complicated things. They're complicated when you have to use all these words to try and describe something which isn't common knowledge. You know, if I was trying to describe the sky, I could say, well, it's this, and it's this, and there's that, and this. And everyone would go, yeah, that's fine, I get that. But when you're trying to describe things that are not common knowledge, it can get a bit awkward. So I think it's possible to clean out the Higgs field. And this is a really good example of the interaction between one of the forces of nature being a two-way street. It creates us, we put things into it, or things go into it from the physical world, which then it uses to create us. So the goal there is to clean out the contamination, to clean out the Higgs field. That's going to be a good one. I'm not at all sure. I don't think we've got that one yet. I don't think we've got one. The other thing is the contamination in the body can be cleaned out. I think that's possible. I think probably method step 1 already does that, so we're already there on that one. But the Higgs field definitely needs cleaned out, and it needs looking at more. Definitely needs a lot more study. This localized Higgs field. It's very interesting. Okay, so thank you for listening. This video is just another step on the way to a greater understanding. I never know when I start these videos where it's going to end up. I just sit here and out it all comes. It normally comes to me when I take the dog for a walk, and as I'm walking up and down the road, all this working out goes on. I come in, sit down, and out it all goes. So, yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll leave it at that. And I'll let more come to me, and we'll go have another go at it. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to you joining me on the next one. Thank you.